Hello, my friends. Rob Roselli coming to you once again on the Not Fox News Network. Today being Tuesday, May 11th, 2016. And again, the website boxofsunglasses.com, Twitter at Rob Roselli, Facebook Rob Roselli1, email info@boxofsunglasses.com, and again, the website boxofsunglasses.com. And just to review the last, say, couple months, we went through Matthew 24 line by line. Okay, and by the way, all the videos are available if you go to boxofsunglasses.com. On the top of the page, there's a link to this show live Tuesdays and Thursdays most of the time. I can't make it every time, 9 p.m. Eastern time, but there's also a link to my other videos, archived videos, so when I refer back to them, so I'm not repeating myself over and over again, I'll give a quick review of the last several weeks, but all those old videos can be there with program descriptions and that sort of thing. But again, they're all available. Boxofsunglasses.com. Links are on the top and also available. My books, Pleased to Meet You, okay, available on Amazon. Links are there. Very quick read, okay, designed for today's fast-paced lifestyle. Okay, yeah, you got to spend maybe an hour, 2 hours total reading it, but it does cover quite a bit, and it ties up a lot of loose ends in this insanity, this insane asylum we call planet Earth. Okay, and explains who's running the show and why things are so insane, and a historical narrative, basically the conversation between Satan and the O'Brien character, although fictional, I think the references, the biblical references and the historical references they make going back and forth are absolutely true. Okay, so that's all covered in there, just a different aspect or a different way to approach the quote conspiracy, again, to try to explain the insanity, the endless wars, the debt, just the nonsense going on, the lies, just everything, the big pile of minutia that is life today in these United States, and how we got here. And also, speaking of that, the Un-American Genocidal Complex, also available through my website on Amazon. And we'll get into that a little bit detail tonight. Apparently, these stupid, useful idiot, American liberal, progressive, social justice warriors, all the clowns, buffoons, still haven't figured it out, how stupid they really are. I don't know what else to say. Calling Trump Hitler and all this sort of thing. But actually Hitler was a Darwinist, a eugenicist, a fan of Planned Parenthood, a worshipper of nature, obviously a socialist. Nazi means National Socialism, government control of everything from healthcare to industry to education. So pretty much Hitler was an American liberal. I mean, that's just objective observation. I mean, if you drew a side-by-side comparison, that's what Hitler was. So, Trump, and this isn't I'm not pumping up Trump or supporting him, this isn't, but Trump is pretty much the antithesis of Hitler. But, it's getting harder and harder to even respond to these people, okay, but that's just the way it is. And of course, the initial book, They Live, in honor of John Carpenter's great movie, They Live, Great Society of the Undead. And this word great's very interesting, by the way. We could spend a whole show on that, and maybe we should at some point. It's a code name for the devil. Okay, I'll just come out and say it. And that's fully documented in Section 3 of that book, available as a PDF download on boxofsunglasses.com, and you can click through and find that. And that one, you're on the honor system as far as payment. But that is actually several books jammed into one. I don't have money to sit here and publish hundreds of books. I mean, that's it. That's what it is. So, and everything else on the site is obviously there, free of charge, PDFs, fully documented, fully corroborated, etc., etc. And then, of course, just a quick review. And again, I can't emphasize this one enough. You have the lost symbol here, U.S. News and World Report, the all-seeing eye. Okay, and again, if you really want to know, if you're new, this is one of my favorites right here, the Invisible College, forerunners to the British Royal Society, the British Roundtable groups, okay, going back to the mythology of King Arthur and the Round Table, okay, because the people running the world really are a bunch of occult-minded, genocidal, devil-worshipping psychopaths, okay, but don't want to go off on a tangent right now, so, but anyway, so you got the Invisible College, let me get this straight here, the British Royal Society, Round Table Groups, Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberg, Skull and Bones, or what I call the Un-American Genocidal Complex. But don't forget what this picture has, you know, the rose and the cross, the Rosicrucians, the rose symbolic of the, let's just say, the typical male Egyptian god Osiris, and the cross, the female, the four kingdoms of nature, the rose plus the cross, the Rosicrucians, Robert Christian. Okay, the Rosicrucians are the 18th or 6 plus 6 plus 6 degree of Freemasonry. Okay, and you know, don't forget above we got little, don't forget we got little baby Lucifer flying around. All this symbolism. Okay, right here in U.S. News and World Report, the unseen hive, the great architect of the universe, what the Freemasons call their God, which is not the God of the Bible. Remember a few minutes ago what I said? The word great is a code name for the devil. I mean, there's a prime example of it right there. The great architect of the universe guiding the invisible college to their utopia. Okay, 1618, the golden ratio. We've talked about that quite a bit, which actually segues, let me just pull it out here, segues into the next subject, which would be this. Okay, remember 1618, above the invisible college, which is the golden ratio. Okay, then we have the Rothschild-owned Economist magazine, and what do we have right here? We have phi, or 0.618, 30 years in 1988, 30 years prior to the Freemasonic year of 6018, because the Freemasons consider 4000 BC as year zero, so the year 2018, 30 years prior to the phoenix rising out of the ashes of the U.S. economy. Okay, 2018 is next year, by the way, 6 months away. You have this 10-nation confederacy with the Osiris-like phoenix rising from the ashes with the Osiris-like corn. Osiris was known as a corn god, or a god of wheat and agriculture, from his position down there below the earth as the god of the underworld. He pushed up the plants and the trees for the Egyptians every year, or so they thought. So that's where the corn comes from. So again, this all ties together. Okay, and again, the golden ratio 0.618, and that's the next year, of course, being the year 6018. Zeros are a placeholder in gematria, or the occult numerology of our devil-worshipping criminal overlord. So that makes that, of course, phoenix rising from the ashes of the burned, chaotic U.S. economy very significant. Now, before we get into tonight's subject, which is Planned Parenthood, eugenics, and Darwin, and what God really has to say about abortion in the Old Testament, and it's not pretty for the abortionists. But before we, just delve into that, don't forget, okay, that again, the number of the beast, okay, is 600 and you're to calculate the number of the beast, okay. And I just went through a very quick overview as to what it's really pointing to. Okay, it's not pointing to some stupid Islamic, Jewish temple antichrist. Okay, like many so-called televangelists and so-called biblical prophecy experts keep telling us. Okay, it's much bigger than that. I'm not belittling what's going on in the Middle East, and it will have its part in end-time events. But I'm saying for right now, if you're living in America, living in the United States, I think we have a lot more to worry about right now, and I mean a lot more to worry about. And perhaps that alone can be a subject of a show in and of itself. Okay, but be that as it may, so this basically it's a good time to just review the three basic, simple principles for this presentation. One is the Bible is the infallible Word of God, no questions asked. Okay. Matthew 12, he that is not with me is against me. Okay. John 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Okay, etc., etc. There's no negotiating. There's no middle ground. There's no theological evolution or whatever the stupid terminology is that the so-called Christian Catholic Church is trying to negotiate with the world. Okay, just take it or leave it. Okay, there's just no choice there. Number two is Israel. Okay, national Israel is not God's chosen people. They're not the center of biblical prophecy. I mean, they're involved, but right now, and they will be involved after the United States is pretty much wiped off the map. Okay, it's Mystery Babylon. Okay, covered Revelation 17 and 18, line by line breakdown on my site. But anyway, Israel is not the focal point. They're not God's chosen people. We've gone through just numerous passages, and we'll go through some more tonight. We'll touch on that in our discussions tonight. I don't know how you read the Old Testament and really most of the New Testament and what Paul had to say and come to that conclusion without being one or two things. Really, number one, you don't know what the blank you're talking about, or number two, you're just a swindler. Okay, you're a prophet of God. Okay, prophet with an F. I don't know what else to say. Okay, on that one. And number three, that segues into what I was just saying, that the United States is the Mystery Babylon, the focal point, the end times whore of Babylon is the United States. There's no debating that. Okay, I know there's all kinds of traffic going back and forth with this and that. And look, it's not the subject of tonight's show. Well, it kind of is in a peripheral, way, or ancillary kind of way. It is. Okay, as the purveyors of Planned Parenthood and the abortion movement and the creator of people like Adolf Hitler and Mao and Stalin, who were responsible for hundreds of millions of deaths, the AIDS virus, the abortion, okay, that's 50 million plus just in the United States, not counting international Planned Parenthood, the endless wars. So we are purveyors of death, okay, quite simply. The radical environmental movement, which has nothing to do with environment and everything to do with eugenics and population control. All of that stuff emanates mostly out of the United States. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of it's sourced over in England with the Rothschilds. I get all that, the Royal Society. But again, this is your Royal Society, Invisible College, to your deep state, or whatever people are calling it now, what I call the un-American genocidal complex, the skull and bones Eastern establishment that runs, or the Anglo-American establishment that runs the United States and, in fact, the world, well, for at least the time being. Okay. That control is going to slip away, and the world really hates the United States, or hates the whore, and that's clearly explained in, again, my line-by-line breakdown of Revelation 17 and 18. But I don't know what other conclusion you can come to. Okay, other than that, but again, let's just kind of keep that thought in mind. Principle number 3: the United States as Mystery Babylon. Okay, because tonight we're going to talk Planned Parenthood. Now, again, the origins of Planned Parenthood, okay, are rooted in Darwinism and Margaret Sanger. Okay, as a matter of fact, just real quickly, if you go into my site, okay, by the way, there's a new link, my new friend Dr. Bill Deagle, page 18, he's got a great website, healthy alternatives, vitamins, etc. And I've got a new podcast going with him, more of that information to come briefly. But anyway, his link is down there. But anyway, just going to the theory of evolution. Okay, page 3, boxofsunglasses.com, and a table of contents. You can read my evolution quote quiz. Okay, and this is just a very quick summary of, and basically the point is, okay, and I present quotes from American eugenicists, okay, Charles Davenport, and these sorts of people who are Darwin disciples, okay, nature freaks, worshippers of nature, nature created humanity, and all this other sort of thing, and survival of the fittest and social Darwinism and all other nonsense. But what that resulted in was Margaret Sanger and the American Birth Control League, which we know today as Planned Parenthood. And Margaret Sanger, in her own words, okay, as that quote on that link, the theory of evolution, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But if you go over there, the evolution quote quiz and look and read it, okay, the language of Margaret Sanger and other American eugenicists that are listed there, Charles Darwin and Adolf Hitler, is indistinguishable. Okay, so let me repeat that. If you read objectively Margaret Sanger next to Charles Darwin, next to Adolf Hitler, the language is quite indistinguishable. Okay, and that's just objective fact, and you're not gonna be able to tell the difference of who's speaking. I mean, if you look at those quotes, honestly, without looking at the answers at the bottom, you won't know who's saying what, okay? And Margaret Sanger and Adolf Hitler were quite friendly, okay? You know, Margaret Sanger wanted to get rid of black people the same way Hitler wanted to get rid of Jews, okay? But in the ranking system, they're both quite similar. Now, Hitler couldn't get rid of black people because there just weren't that many black people living in Germany at the time of, you know, the 1930s, or else they would have ended up in concentration camps too, okay? So it's all there. I mean, that's just objective, basic history. Okay. You know, so of course today the so-called liberals have captured Planned Parenthood and turned it into some kind of women's rights kind of thing. They can't say anything about what it does for blacks because actually, according to the website blackgenocide.org, Planned Parenthood is successfully reaching its goal to basically eliminate the American black, genocide them or kill them out of existence the next 20 to 30 years, assuming the country lasts that long, which I don't think it will, but that's another story. But be that as it may, I mean, it was intended, its nickname was called the Negro Project. Okay, so in the started out as American Birth Control League. Obviously, it became very unpopular for obvious reasons to be allied with people like Adolf Hitler, Klaus Barbie, and Joseph Mengele. So the American Birth Control League changed its name to Planned Parenthood. Okay, that happened around, I think, around the mid-1940s. Okay, and that's just basic history. I mean, that's not conspiracy theory. That's not some right-wing rant. That's just basic history. Of course, you can't even say that, or you will be branded some kind of white male Christian hater or whatever. But again, I'm not the one killing black babies with the full intent of eliminating the black race from the United States. Okay, in honor of Charles Darwin, who was an avid racist, whether he admitted it or not, whether the imbeciles at Harvard, the professors and the experts, so-called, that support Charles Darwin admit it or not, that's what it is. I mean, they're putting black people in circuses and zoos, okay, in this country, not to mention sanitariums, and institutionalizing them, basically equating them to monkeys. That's just basic history, okay? That's white, liberal, progressive history, but you won't hear that in the white, liberal education establishment because it goes against the image they want to portray themselves as. So yes, that makes Black Lives Matter, along with the other American white liberals and the college kids, probably maybe the dumbest group of people. I don't know. I don't know. It's insanity. At some point, I find it hard to believe people are that stupid on purpose. Okay, which means the Bible has to be true. You know, things like 2 Corinthians chapter 4, where it says that the God of this world has blinded many people. Okay, because there's no way, in my opinion, that people can be this stupid. It's just not possible. Okay, so the God of this world, or Satan, or Robert Christian, or whatever you want to call him, Hermes, okay, has in fact blinded many people, particularly here in Mystery Babylon. But we're going off subject, so let's go back. Okay, now let's talk about the Old Testament. Now to think God is sitting up there and just kind of twiddling his thumbs and watching what was formerly a Christian nation, the greatest political system, albeit imperfect, but the greatest political system in the history of the world, and the greatest nation in the history of the world, founded on Christian principles and divine providence per the Declaration of Independence. Parentheses, yeah, I know there's a lot of fellow conspiracy kooks out there that'll say, oh, American was Freemasons, and to that I say it's a bunch of crap. Okay, if you go back to the fundamentalists that founded this nation, okay, the dyed-in-the-wool, okay, lesser-known founders, okay, the sacrifice of the American Revolution, et cetera, et cetera. My response to those types of people is, if you go back to the original founding document as it's in its original intent, the Christian education, the gold-backed currency, the separation of powers, okay, if we follow their formula to a T, it goes directly against the Satanist, Freemason, Rosicrucians running the world, the devil-worshipping maniacs running the world right now. They are intent on destroying this United States as it was founded. So how can you sit there and say the United States founders, the founding fathers, were part of the conspiracy? It's a ridiculous premise, okay? I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because I'm going off subject, but it kind of ties into the whole conversation here, because I'm trying to establish that, yes, these United States is Old Testament Israel and worse, okay? Because Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven has come upon you. If you read, Luke 9, Luke 10, Matthew 11, okay, Matthew 12, Jesus says, I am here. I'm the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is here. So the Old Testament Jews didn't have the kingdom of heaven. They had Moses, okay? And this is in the book of Hebrews. I want to say Hebrews 10, but don't quote me on that, okay? If people can be punished, okay, at the word of Moses, how much worse is it going to be for people that have had Jesus himself preach to them? And I'm paraphrasing, and I believe it's Hebrews chapter 10, okay? So the point is, the United States is held to a very, very high standard. Yeah, we're lucky, we're blessed and all that, and, not anymore. Again, I keep going off on tangents, but this isn't the United States. This country right here, that's physically the United States, isn't the United States, okay? But anyway, the point is, this was definitely a Christian-founded nation, okay? Yeah, Thomas Jefferson, okay, there's a few that are up in the air. Benjamin Franklin, there's a few people that are marginal, okay, you can argue about, but that's it, okay? Close parentheses, so let's not go on that subject. So, but the point is, just look at the language of some of the Old Testament. This is God talking to the Old Testament Jews, but extrapolate this kind of thing to now, to the 21st century. So we had a nation founded under divine providence and Christian principles that now calls it a right and a privilege to murder a baby in the womb. And in many cases, okay, in the case of partial birth abortion, or in the case of Obama, Farrell Barry, who believed that a baby should be allowed to be murdered after it was born, as was this Dr. Kurt Gosnell in Philadelphia. That was a case about 5 years ago that was birthing babies, live babies, and them snapping their necks, basically after they were born, and another really repugnant procedures. He wasn't really performing abortions right, which basically means it's murder. So really, it's a matter of a few inches. I mean, you keep the baby partially in the womb, and you suck its brains out with a catheter, crush its skull, and it's legal. You let the feet come out, and you snap its neck, and all of a sudden it's illegal. So somewhere in that line, there's a murder. But I'm just how ridiculous it all is. But anyway, this is not my language, okay, that I'm going to start reading here, okay? This is God himself, all right? And now you can argue. People come across this, may want to shoot the messenger, may want to kill me, and that's fine, whatever. But let's just read Zephaniah chapter 1, okay? The word of the Lord which came unto Zephaniah, the son of Cushi, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, in the days of Josiah, the son of Amon, king of Judah. I will utterly consume things off the land. I will stretch out my hand upon Judah. Remember, Judah, parentheses, New Testament is America. Okay? There's no doubt about that. Okay, and upon all inhabitants of Jerusalem, i.e. Mystery Babylon, New York City, the United States. And I will cut off the remnant of Baal. Okay, now Baal, okay, is really an offshoot of the god of chaos, or Pan, or pandemonium. Chaos, okay, the Greek god Pan, a nature god, known as Green Man, or Baal, or Osiris. Okay, starting to see this stuff kind of connect. We haven't really gotten to the good stuff yet. Okay, and them that worship the host of heaven upon the housetops, and them that swear by the Lord and swear by Malcolm. Now Malcolm is another name for Molech, okay, which is a large owl-like deity. Okay, not that different from, say, the Burning Man, who the nature freaks, the Gaia, Isis, Mother Earth worshipping nature freaks worship on the Beltane or May 1st every year. Okay, Moloch. Okay, Bohemian Grove. Okay, some of you may have heard of Bohemian Grove out in California every year where they worship something called Burning Man. Okay, it's a representation of Moloch or Baal. So if you think this Old Testament stuff is for the birds, or it's in the past, or Christianity now is just a bunch of Jesus freaks jumping around to stupid music, dancing around the stage like idiots, okay, with their Christian rock music and the Old Testament, and that's all in the past. It's not the case. All right. The day of the Lord is at hand. Okay, now I won't go off into that. Okay, but the day of the Lord is actually this third day, Christ's resurrection. Okay, it's not a literal day. It is in the case of his resurrection, but we've talked about in the past on Christ rising on the third day versus him saying him being in the heart of the earth or in hell for 3 days and 3 nights. It's a mathematical. If you take the Bible literally, okay, and you say Jesus was 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb, you're just wrong. Okay, if you're a biblical literalist, because mathematically it's just not my opinion. That's just what the Bible says. Jesus says he'll be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. But then he also says, I will arise on the third day. Well, the problem is, if you rise on the third day, you're short one night, aren't you? Okay. So in other words, the day of the Lord is Sunday, the first day of the week, or the 8th day, just like, Jesse or David, which was one of the main representatives of Jesus in the Old Testament, was the 8th son of Jesse, and we've gone through the number 8, and I don't want to go off on that right now. That's, if you go on the YouTube, my old channels, you can pick up the description and go into all about that. But anyway, the day of the Lord, the point is for right now, the day of the Lord is the tribulation, which has been happening for the past 2,000 years, and we've also talked about the tribulation, what it really is. Okay, I don't want to go off on that tangent right now, but then it says, I will search Jerusalem with candles and punish the men that are settled on their lees, that say in their heart, the Lord will not do good, neither where he will do evil. So in other words, people that are arrogant and think that God's just kind of hanging out, he's never going to react to the abortion, the population control, the Federal Reserve thievery, the wars, okay, the abortions, okay, those people that think they're getting away with it, these women and men, okay, selling baby body parts, that think they're so cool, okay, and the politicians that support them, okay, are trying to sue people for exposing them. It's just not the way it is, okay. It's just, I don't know what else to say. This is pretty strong language here, okay. Then it says right here, neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath, but the whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy, for he shall make a speedy riddance of all them that dwell in the land. Okay. Now that's just, I don't know how you misinterpret that. Okay. But that's just the way. That's just Zephaniah. That's just one example from a so-called minor prophet. Okay. And that's just, I don't know what else to say on that. All right. It says the great day of the Lord is near. Okay. And it says that day is a day of wrath. Okay. It keeps referring to this concept of a day. All right. And again, the children of God, just again as another aside, we're subject to tribulation. Okay. And not the wrath. Okay. We're not subject to the wrath is the sixth seal. Okay. When the wrath of God, that's synonymous with the second coming of Jesus. Okay. There's no stupid rapture. There's no 3.5 years of 2 witnesses in Jerusalem. We've gone through all that. Okay. It's just, there's going to be destruction. There's going to be distress. Okay. There's going to be an economic collapse. It's going to suck for a very short time. Okay. And that's going to be it. And we've gone through all that. I don't want to go off on that tangent right now, but now here's a very interesting, we'll just read this last. This is verse 17. And I will bring distress upon men, that they shall walk like blind men, because they have sinned against the Lord, and their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as the dung. Okay? So in other words, you're crap. not this is my not my language. Okay, this is right out of Zephaniah chapter 1. You can read it for yourself, the King James version. Okay, so to the Lord, Planned Parenthood, okay, is dust and dung, and people like them. Okay, I'm just right now. I'm focusing on Planned Parenthood. People that defend them, people that sit around and say, oh, the gods, he doesn't really exist. I can sell baby body parts and go out and buy my Lamborghini. I can sell baby body parts and get votes. I can support Planned Parenthood and say I'm supporting women's rights, get votes, come I'm a good politician. Like God stuff, that's all that Old Testament kind of crap. We don't really believe that. Besides, evolution tells me there is no God, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and aborting innocent children, even if they are viable human beings outside the womb. I don't have a problem with sucking their brains out with a catheter and selling their parts, or putting them in a landfill, or burning them for clean energy, etc., etc. So, God, excuse my French, but you're shit to God, is what this is saying. Okay, Lord, forgive me but I don't know how else to say it. Okay, now let's just go on here. Okay, now Hosea has some interesting language. Okay, right here. Okay, let's just jump over to Hosea chapter 5, and I picked this up. Hear ye this, O priests, and hearken ye, house of Israel, parentheses, United States, Mystery Babylon, okay. Give ye ear, O house of the king, for judgment is toward you, because you have been a snare on Mizpah and a net spread upon Tabor, okay. I know Ephraim, which is another name for Old Testament, the northern 10 tribes of Israel, okay, capital in Samaria, okay. Remember, Old Testament Israel split up into 10 tribes after the death of King David's son, King Solomon. Okay, Israel just was basically turned into a civil war and a mess. Okay, sometimes the 10 tribes are known as Ephraim, and the southern 2 tribes were known as Jerusalem or Judah. But anyway, they will not frame their doings to turn unto their God, for the spirit of whoredoms is in the midst of them, and they have not known the Lord. Now, spirit of whoredoms, okay, whore of Babylon, Revelation 17, okay, and also this speaks to this whole God's chosen people kind of thing. Okay, remember, this is Old Testament, so he's talking physically to national Israel. Okay, so he's calling you national Israel a bunch of spiritual fornicators. Okay, if you want to talk about spiritual fornication, just as an aside, okay, he's talking about things like the 6,660 inch or 555 foot tall phallic symbol in the middle of the nation's capital, known as the Washington Monument, which is really a representation of the phallus of Osiris, the dead Osiris, okay, as it faces the womb of Columbia, or the female goddess Gaia, or Isis, okay. So that's the whoredoms, that's a spiritual fornication he's really talking about here. Okay, Old Testament Israel, New Testament United States, Mystery Babylon. I mean, does it get any more obvious than that? Okay. Again, I don't know how you come to any other conclusion. I mean, it's there. I mean, you talk about a middle finger to God. Okay, you have this phallus of Osiris, right in the middle of the nation's capital, facing the womb known as the Capitol Building. Mid-District of Columbia, the female goddess. Anyway, they have dealt treacherously against the Lord, for they have begotten strange children. Now shall a month devour them with their portion. Okay, now strange children. Okay. Remember John chapter 8, Jesus said to the Jews, God's chosen people, okay, again, who represent the Jews would, the Kabbalah, okay, they gave rise to groups like the Rosicrucians, the Knights Templar, okay, again, who we discussed before, you get into today's Eastern establishment, or the deep state, or whatever you want to call it, okay, the occult devil worshippers that run the world. But anyway, in John chapter 8, Jesus calls the forerunners to all these groups they are of their father the devil. Okay, so they're the children. Okay, this is the strange children that God's talking about here in Hosea chapter 5. Okay. Now shall a month devour them with their portions. Okay, blow ye the cornet and Gibeah, to excuse my pronunciations, and the trumpet Ramah, cry aloud at Bethaven after thee, O Benjamin. Ephraim shall be desolate in a day of rebuke. Among the tribes of Israel have I made known that which they shall surely be. So in other words, they're going to be desolate. They're going to be made desolate. Okay, we're going to just pick up on this language. So just keep this in mind. Remember, their dung and dust are thrown upon the ground. They begotten strange children. A month shall devour them. And I don't know if I want to go off onto the real meaning of that right now. They have John chapter 8. They're of their father, the devil. Okay, so the Jews, God's chosen people, who Jesus himself condemned to hell in multiple chapters in the New Testament in the Apostle Paul, Matthew 23 and 24, for instance. But let's just jump over to, let's say, Hosea. I think it's chapter 9. Okay. Rejoice not, O Israel, for joy as other people, for thou hast gone a whoring from thy God. Thou hast loved a reward upon every corn floor. Okay. So you got Old Testament Israel, whore, corn floor. I remember before. Okay, made the connection to corn and Osiris and the god of chaos, the golden ratio. 0.618. The inverse of the golden ratio is 1.618. 6 plus 6 plus 6, 18. Okay. I don't know how much more obvious, hopefully this is starting to sink in. People are listening or will be listening to this. Okay. So forget the stupid preachers and sending your money to Israel and all this other thing. You better start worrying about yourselves and your families. Okay. And anybody you can reach, like I'm trying to right now, with this information. But anyway, the floor and the winepress shall not feed them, and the new wine shall fail in her. Now this reference to wine. Okay, another offshoot, another relation to this. Okay, the chaos, the destruction, the death, the wars, the Planned Parenthood, the abortion. It's all represented here in this fire. Okay. Another of the god Baal or Moloch. Okay, Osiris, who we were talking about just a few minutes ago. Another representation of that is Dionysus, okay, or the god of wine, okay. So that's where all the references, wine and revelry and sexuality and orgies and chaos in general. Okay, it was Dionysus. Okay, that's his references to the wine here. Okay. They shall not dwell in the Lord's land, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt, and they shall eat unclean things in Assyria. Okay. They shall not offer wine offerings to the Lord, neither shall they be pleasing unto him. Their sacrifices shall be unto them as the bread of mourners. All that eat thereof shall be polluted. Okay. What will you do in the solemn day, in the day of the feast of the Lord? Okay, so again, this is the day of the Lord's wrath. And the day of the feast of the Lord, again, has two meanings. Okay, you have the feast of the Lord, those who will reign with Christ, 2 Timothy chapter 2. Okay, those who die will reign with Christ. Okay, the New Testament believers or the born-again believers, hopefully all those that come across this video. Okay, and then you have the solemn day. Okay, the people that are, unfortunately, the American Planned Parenthood types, that are going to be facing the wrath of the Lord. Okay, that's not really going to be good. So that's really what God is asking here in Hosea 9:5. For lo, they are gone because of destruction. Either should gather them up. Okay, well, the days of visitation are come. The days of recompense or revenge are come. Okay, the wrath of God. And Israel shall know it. The prophet is a fool. The spiritual man is man, for the multitude of thy iniquity and the great hatred. So in other words, the priests, the experts, okay, the televangelists, okay, they're all fools and morons, okay. I don't know what to say there. And of course, God's chosen people, the whole thing, okay. They have deeply corrupted themselves, Okay. So here's, and as for Ephraim, their glory shall fly away like a bird. Okay. Remember, Revelation 18, the mystery Babylon has become the cage of every unclean and dirty bird. Okay. Dirty birds represent demons or fallen angels or UFOs in the Old Testament. Okay. Another name for the, the so-called gods or Anunnaki of the ancient aliens. Okay, was dirty birds. Okay. And again, if you want to know more on that information, there's Steve Quayle. I think that's getting into Steve Quayle territory. And again, I don't know Steve Quayle. I'm sure he doesn't know me. But if you really want more information on that sort of thing, that's where you can go. Okay, I have more than enough to cover here. I don't need to get into that sort of thing. I never catch up to his research anyway. But anyway, and Ephraim, so the glory shall fly away from like a bird, from the birth and from the womb and from the conception. Okay, so now, though they bring up their children, yet I will bereave them, that there shall not be a man left. Yea, woe also to them when I depart from them. I saw Tyrus is planted in a pleasant place, but Ephraim shall bring forth his children to the murderer. Okay, so that's very interesting. Okay, who's the murderer? Okay, the first murderer was Satan. Okay, John chapter 8, you have your father, the devil. Okay, he was a murderer from the beginning. That's Cain, the first murderer. Okay. Give them, O Lord, what wilt thou give? Give them a miscarrying womb and dry breasts. Okay. Let's just hang on to that one. That's probably the most important verse for tonight's subject. But all their wickedness is in Gilgal, for there I hated them. Okay, so people that say, God's a God of love and all this, and everything's going to be fine and kumbaya. No, God, He hated these people. What do you think? What do you think He thinks about Planned Parenthood? Okay, and what was legitimately a Christian nation? Okay, living off the let's just say, living off what's left of this nation, living off what was started as a Christian and godly fearing nation. Now we have Pharaoh Barry, God bless Planned Parenthood and all this. What do you think what are his thoughts, okay? Again, it's all right here, and this is Hosea chapter 9, okay? I will drive them out of my house, I will love them no more. All their princes are revolters. Ephraim is smitten, their root is dried up, they shall bear no fruit. Yea, though they bring forth, yet will I slay even the beloved fruit of their womb, their children. Okay. My God will cast them away because they did not hearken unto him, and they shall be wanderers among the nations. Okay, just as a quick aside, okay, their root is dried up, they shall bear no fruit. He's talking again about Old Testament Israel here, God's chosen people, okay. And this is throughout all the Old Testament, by the way, this kind of language. This is just very quick snapshots in the hour or so that this show is on, okay, but just, be that as it may, okay, remember, I think it's in Matthew 21, and Jesus says to the fig tree, which is symbolic of Israel, may you never bear fruit again, and immediately the tree dries up. Okay. Remember in Matthew 3, John the Baptist, not John the Apostle who wrote Revelation, okay, said, the axe is already at the root of the tree. Any tree that does not bear fruit will be cast down and thrown into the fire. This means, God's wrath is the fire. So he's saying right there, in Matthew 21, this goes back to language like in Hosea 9. You're not bearing fruit. You're dried out. You're no good to me. Okay, that's Old Testament Israel and New Testament Israel. Okay, so I don't know how you missed that language. Yes, there will be a remnant of Israel saved in the last days in physical national Israel. Okay, that's covered again in Ezekiel 36. I don't want to go off on that tangent right now, but yes, Israel was regathered. Okay, and God did it, and he said why he did it in Ezekiel 36. End of story. Okay, it's not because they're his chosen people or they're doing anything great. Okay, as you can see, they haven't been. Okay, but let's just go back to this. Give them, O Lord, what will thou give? Give them a miscarrying womb and dry breast. In other words, the whore of Babylon, okay, as we just talked about, is really the whore really represents false religion and Baal and Moloch and Osiris worship. Okay, so when you combine the female whore religion and you conceive on things like the phallus of Osiris, like the Washington Monument, and spiritual conception, what God is saying, I'm going to give them a miscarrying womb. He's going to abort. Just to me, he says, God, you want to abort? You want to play that game of abortion, eugenics, crowd control, wars for population control, AIDS, and all this sort of thing? And he's saying, all right, that's how you want to do things, United States, Mystery Babylon, who I bless so much, and you want to abort 50 million babies and counting, plus not to mention the hundreds of millions. I don't really know how many. International Planned Parenthood, not to mention all the other population control, eugenics type stuff that's emanated from this country, to Darwinism, to Hitler, okay, communism, okay, that all emanated from right here in the United States, the so-called intellectuals, the Ivy League elites, the American liberals, progressives, whatever you want to call them, the white liberal, northeastern elite, okay, you want your abortion. God said, well, I'm going to give your mother your false religion of nature worship, of Moloch worship. I'm going to abort you. Now remember what we read about back in Zephaniah chapter 1, you're going to be blood, your blood's going to be dust, and your flesh is going to be dung upon the ground. Okay. And then remember, Hosea chapter 5, which we just read, a month shall devour you. Okay. And that month, I believe, represents the 43rd month. Okay, if you go into the book of Revelation, it talks about 42 months, the two witnesses, which represent the Old Testament prophets like Hosea and Daniel, Moses, Noah, those kinds of people. Not two literal witnesses, and we discussed this on last week's show, and that's archived in my YouTube channel. Okay, don't want to go off on that right now, but other than that, okay, those people, again, it says, my two witnesses shall preach for 1260 days, and also it mentions 42 months, okay. Well, what happens after 42 months? There's a 43rd month, okay, there's an extra month in there, okay. Without getting into it, we're going to get off on that subject right now, but let's just go there. Okay. This is Revelation 11. But the court which is without the temple leave out, measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, in the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. Okay, so this is the time, I believe. Again, this is a representation of the time of the old, up to Jesus' birth, okay? And it's also called 1,203 score days, or 1,260 days. It's 42 months times 30. Okay, it's 1,260 days. Okay, and then they're killed. And that's, again, we talked about this last week, this language of the two witnesses. I believe it's Psalm 73 or 79, or both. You can kind of read about what the two witnesses really are. And it's clearly explained in those Psalms. Okay, but again, so when Hosea 5 says a month shall devour you, okay, there's an extra month here. Okay, and I believe that month is the 43rd month. Okay, and why do I say that? Well, again, it's going off on another. It's hard not to go off on tangents here, but remember, let's just go to Matthew chapter 1. Okay, now Matthew specifically names 42 generations. He called out this 42 generations. Okay, from Abraham unto Jesus. So again, if you're born again, you're part of that 42 generations. You're born again. You're part of Jesus' family. You're in that 42 generations. It's the body of Christ. Colossians chapter 1, Romans chapter 12, etc. Okay, but if you're not part of that 42nd generation, that means you're born of the devil, or the whore of Babylon. Okay, so which makes you what? The 43rd generation. So there's a number 43. So there's that 43rd month. Okay, and I believe that that's, again, it's symbolically, it lines up. And now in John chapter 5, remember, he says, the disciple asked him, what are you doing, Lord? And then Jesus just pulls something totally at random. He says, don't you have a saying that there's 4 months until the harvest? Okay, but I tell you the harvest is already here. Okay, which implies that, and he says, so those that sow and those that reap can be happy together. So in other words, those that sow are the Old Testament prophets, the 2 witnesses. Okay, they've been cultivating and sowing, and now it's harvest time. Jesus is the time of harvest. Okay, remember in Matthew, I think it's Matthew 9, Jesus says, pray that, look, at the harvest is great and the laborers are few. Pray that you can send people to this harvest. But anyway, if you go back to John chapter 5, what's Jesus saying is that, 4 months, okay, which happens to be 120 days, by the way, which makes, God, when he tells Noah, man shall tread on the earth 120 years. Remember, a day is equal to a year to the Lord. Okay, and that's, I believe, in Ezekiel chapter 3, where a day represents a year, and that's in several other places. Okay, a day represents a year. So anyway, so all these things tie together numerically and symbolically, not literally. Okay, literally in a minor sense, but much bigger in a symbolic sense. But anyway, so getting back to John chapter 5, so he says, don't you say that, you have 4 months, they say the harvest is now. So if you look at that, so that means the harvest takes place in the 5th month. Okay, that's the harvesting of born-again believers, but there's a month in there that the 120 years of mankind is up. Okay, so remember, if you're born again, you're part of those 100. You caught the last train out, which is Jesus. Okay, which is the 42nd generation, but you're the 43rd generation. You're part of Satan, or you're part of the 43rd month. Okay, which is this plus 142 months talked about in Revelation chapter 11. And I'm doing the best to kind of keep the conversation tight, by the way. People may want to challenge my interpretations, but again, they're mathematically based, and they're simple. Okay, this isn't anything complicated. But anyway, if you're part of this 43rd generation or 43rd month, then you've got problems. You're a son of Satan, John chapter 8. But it makes Hosea chapter 5 a lot more interesting. In this context of our conversation, it says a month shall, begotten strange children, or children of the devil, and a month shall devour you. Okay, so in other words, in the figurative sense, any non-believers, okay, are being dissolved, they're being done away with, spiritually speaking, and literally speaking, at the second coming, but that's a whole other story. But figuratively speaking, what Jesus is saying, you're all you children of the devil, you're going to be dust and dung upon the ground, all you Planned Parenthood people and those that defend you, okay? And then don't forget, a miscarrying womb, dung and dust upon the earth, and a miscarrying womb. So in other words, what God seems to be saying here is that I'm going to abort. You think abortion? You think that's funny? You think this is a game? You think it's money to be made here, and you're God, and you can decide who lives and who dies? God's saying you're going to be aborted, and you're going to be dung and dust on the ground. Okay, that's pretty strong language, and this all ties together quite nicely. Again, these numbers and the symbolism, and I get it and all that sort of thing. But let's just conclude with this. People may doubt my interpretations, but let's just go back to the book of Exodus and the 10 Commandments. Okay. Now, what does Jesus say here? The second commandment. Okay, that's I know that God's before me. I am the Lord thy God, which has brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Okay, the prison house of Satan. Okay, Pharaoh represents Satan. Okay, so for the asswipes out there that want to say, Horus, that Christianity is a rip-off of Egyptian paganism, with the 3 days, and born of the virgin, all those stupid asswipes like Bill Maher have obviously never bothered to read the book of Exodus, or they're just being intellectually dishonest. Okay. But anyway, I don't want to go off on that tangent right now, but I am the Lord thy God, which shall brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So, I guess God is, he's copying Horace, Bill Maher, and others, but at the same time, he just did away with the firstborn of every Egyptian, including the cattle, was the firstborn represented, Horus, okay, or the strange children of Osiris and Isis, the male plus the female, the rose plus the cross, the strange children, okay, the sons of the devil. Okay, so you can see the language is kind of all tying together here. But anyway, the second commandment, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers. Okay, think whore Babylon. Okay, the fathers, spiritually fornicating with these false religions, the Baals, the Molochs, the Dagons of the Philistines, etc., etc. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, like American liberals, American atheists, American evolutionists, American Planned Parenthood types. Okay, but it's very interesting here. He says third and fourth generation, 3 and 4. Why would he say that? Okay, so it's just, that doesn't make any sense. Just the third and the fourth generation, that's all there is. That's ridiculous. Okay, so obviously, this is going back to the book of Exodus. Obviously, there were many, many generations of Jews. Just for example, from the book of Exodus to Hosea, which we're just reading, is probably, say, around 1,000 years, depending on which source you read. Okay, and a biblical generation is standard length, I think, is 40 years. Depends which, but anyway, it's 40 or 120 years. But the point is, there's a lot of generations of Jews that sinned against the Lord throughout the Old Testament. Okay, but here he says this third and the fourth generation. That's very interesting. Okay, so what does he really mean? 3 and 4 is 7. Okay, or third and fourth. What else is in there? We were just talking about 43, or the 43rd generation, or the 43rd month. Okay, now just to kind of wrap this up, let's just go to the book of Matthew. Okay, now if you go to Matthew, I think it's chapter 12. Okay, now what does he say? Now, of course, the Pharisees are basically accusing Jesus, the Son of God, of being the Beelzebub, the Prince of Devils. Okay, this is, God's chosen people accusing Jesus, the focal point of the Bible, accusing him of being, and then some jackass, who's with his theological degrees going to get on, Trinity Broadcasting Network and say, send money to me so I can send it to God's chosen people in Israel. Stupid. But anyway, so what does it say here? O generation of vipers, how can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. Okay. Then the Pharisees respond a couple of verses later. Then certain of the scribes and Pharisees answered, saying, Master, we would see a sign from thee. What does he say? He says, but he answered and said to him, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, but there shall be no sign given to it but the sign of the prophet Jonas. For Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now we talked about 3 and third, a little bit ago, but it's not the point right now. But an evil and adulterous generation, singular. Okay. Now God's wrath. Now he just said in Exodus 20 about, the second commandment, the third and fourth generation, which doesn't make any sense in a literal context. Okay, so what happens? What about the second generation? What about the fifth generation? What about the 10th generation? Those don't count. That's ridiculous. So obviously there's something else going on there. So his third and fourth generation is plural, but then he says, wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, but none shall be given to it. Okay, so he's talking about the 43rd generation. Remember, Matthew 1, there's 42 generations given to Christ. And there's 42 months for the Old Testament prophets to preach in the book of Revelation. In Revelation 11, which we just read. Okay. So just kind of wrapping this up, you know, when Jesus said, or excuse me, when God says in Hosea chapter 5, "And months shall devour you," He's talking about now, okay? So you think, you know, everybody, you know, this Planned Parenthood and these kinds of, you know, these American liberals think they're cute and cutesy and all this kind of thing, and God doesn't really exist, and, you know, He's just kind of, you know, Darwin and all this other sort of thing. Read the Old Testament. Read Zephaniah chapter 1. Just Hosea 5, Hosea 9, which we just read tonight. And that's just barely scratching the surface of the so-called minor prophets, not to mention Isaiah and Jeremiah. If you want to read Jeremiah 50 through 52, and he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, okay, which sounds just like the destruction of Mystery Babylon, Revelation 17 and 18. Okay, anyway, so if you're listening to this right now, clock's ticking. God's Simple Salvation Plan, boxofsunglasses.com. Again, Tuesdays, usually Tuesdays are good, Thursdays are sketchy sometimes, but 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the archives, again, are available. Good night and God bless.